Management, our review monthly meeting. My name is Nicole Hines, representing ISO Customer Readiness, and I will be facilitating today's web conference. Today's call is being recorded. These recordings are for informational and convenience purposes only, and any related transcripts should not be reprinted without the ISO's permission. As a reminder, these monthly calls are structured to stimulate an honest dialogue and engage different perspectives. While we welcome comments and questions, please remember to keep comments professional and respectful. We will be taking questions throughout the call today. If you are dialed in by phone only and not on the WebEx, you can enter the question queue at any time by pressing #2 on your telephone keypad. If you connected audio through the WebEx platform, please use the raise hand feature located above the chat box on the lower right-hand side of your screen. Please introduce yourself before asking your question. If you need technical assistance during the call today, please send a chat message to the event producer. The purpose of today's meeting is to discuss the proposed revision requests that are in the initial or recommendation stage of the process. We will be discussing 24 PRRs today. 14 are in the initial stage, 10 in the recommendation stage. 1 was submitted by SRP, and the remaining PRRs were submitted by the ISO. The purpose of the BPMs is to set forth business practices that implement the ISO tariff. The ISO conducts a yearly policy initiative roadmap process to consider and rank initiatives. Policy changes submitted through PRR process will be referred to the policy initiative roadmap. And each subject area in the BPM is based on enabling language in the ISO tariff. The PRR process cannot be used to introduce changes that are not supported by existing tariff authority. Our first BPM we're going to talk about is the demand response, and I'm going to hand it over to Elaine. We have 2 PRRs, 1444 in the initial stage and 1438 in the recommendation stage. Elaine?
Nicole, good morning, everyone. So the first one is PRR 1444, and this one is to provide more clarity around the monitoring data that is due for demand response data, and to let everyone know that sanctions will be applied if the data is not submitted timely. We did not receive any comments on this one, and therefore the next steps are post-recommendation. Do we have any comments at this time? Okay. Next one is a 1438, resource efficiency evaluation enhancements. We added a couple sections for this initiative. Section 17 was added to account for non-participating demand response scheduling and points to the EIM BPM for more information. We also added Section 18 to account for non-participating demand response in the ALPS forecasting system. This one also points to the EIM BPM for more information. The comment we received was last time was more around clarity, and we provided information at that time. Next step is post-final decision. Are there any additional comments at this time? Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Elaine. The next BPM we're going to talk about is the reliability requirements. We have PRR 1443, which is in the initial stage, and I'm going to hand that over to Melanie to discuss.
Thanks, Nicole. PRR 1443 is just the 2023 availability assessment hours. There we had no initial comments, and the initial comment period already expired. Next step is to post recommendation. Do you guys have any questions for this PRR?
As a reminder, you can raise your hand in the lower right-hand corner of the WebEx, or if you're on the phone, you can hit #2. Okay, thanks, Melanie. The next 3 BPMs we're going to be talking about, Michael will be going over. So we're going to go over the EIM Energy Imbalance Market, Market Operations, and Market Instruments. We have several PRRs and recommendation in initial stages, and I will let Michael introduce those PRRs to you. Michael?
Mexico. It's Michael Martin in Market Operations. This is PRR 1440 enhancements based on the RSC Resource Efficiency Enhancement Project, Phase 1. There are about a dozen enhancements we implemented on June 1st. This BPM outlines those enhancements. We had a couple of questions during the course of this PR. We added an additional example on MSG capacity. And we also added a clarification on the state of charge for the state of charge treatment in RSC, and that it only impacts the ISO for ancillary services. So we completed the recommendation stage without any further comment, and at this point we're proceeding to post-final decision. Any questions on this PR? Okay, next ones are changes to our market operations BPM. First one's PR 1441, ramp rate limitations for certain inverter-based resources, and this is designed to handle resources that don't have plant controllers or any capacity or ability to limit or follow dispatch instructions. We did receive a series of questions from Edison and did respond online to those questions. The intent of this change is to articulate some means of controlling resources that don't have controllers, and also noting the reliability impacts that we're facing. At this point, any other questions to this PR change?
Reminder, if you're on the telephone, you can hit #2, or you can raise your hand if you're dialed in through the WebEx.
Okay, moving on to PR 1433, enforcement of aggregate capacity constraints, and this is this added section discusses impacts and enforcement for when the ACC constraints are exceeded. I believe we received a comment during the initial period, which we did respond to. We did not receive any further comment, and at this point, this change is in post-final decision. Any other questions on this PRR?
Currently no questions in queue.
Okay, PRR 1432, the addition of the 15-minute threshold to the regulation service minimum performance testing. So I call this a process improvement, and for resources that do not provide more than 15 intervals of reg service. Suppose you're a resource that provides only one 15-minute interval of regulation in an entire month, and you might be tardy in that delivery. Then why should we go through an entire decertification process? So we're putting a minimum threshold, helps, our teams, helps your teams from, I would say, just streamlines the process. So we did not receive any further comments in the recommendation period, and this one is also in its post-final decision stage. Any questions on this one? Okay, moving to market instruments BPM. First one is PR 1442, allowing bidding of negative pumping costs. This is a specific situation where, say if you're an SE of a pumping facility, we're allowing and have changed the cyber application to allow negative pumping bid costs. This was implemented as an emergency PRR, already effective. We did not receive any comments, and at this point, going through the BPM process, it's in the post-recommendation stage. Any questions on this one?
There are currently no questions in queue.
I thought I almost heard a comment.
No, there are no questions in queue.
Okay, very good. The next one, PR 1439. This is the counterpart to the resource efficiency, there's a typo here, project, and the transmission service, market service, or scheduling projects. This outlines all the changes in our CMRI and OASIS programs. We've added a series of new fields. We've added a new report that support, greater data transparency for both of these projects. Again, these are outlined in detail down to the field level in this PRR. We didn't receive any comments on this, and at this point, it's in post-final decision.
If you have any comments, reminder, you can raise your hand in the WebEx or hit #2 on your telephone.
There are currently no questions in queue.
Okay, 1433, proxy demand response resource bidding above the 1,000 energy cap. This outlines the details for RDRR resources to submit above $1,000 when conditions are satisfied. We didn't receive any comments. Seems like pardon me. Seems like no comments were received. It is in post-final decision at this point. Any questions on this PR?
There are currently no questions in queue.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Michael. The next BPM we're going to be discussing is settlements and billing BPM. We have one in the initial stage, PR 1437, which was submitted by SRP. We have 3 in the recommendation stage, PR 1436, 1435, and 1431. And I will hand that over to Matthew to discuss.
Thank you, Nicole. Hello, everyone. My name is Matthew Amati, and I'm part of settlements team. I'll go over the settlements PRR, starting with 1437. Update to BPM for new settlement timeline. We haven't received any comments, and the initial comment period expired June 14. Now, with this one, unfortunately, we haven't had time to finish up the BPM, so we are requesting additional time for this. So we will keep this an initial state the next BPM call, and we will post a BPM on this. So we'll go to two additional cycles. Any questions on this before we move to the next PRR? Next PR 1436, update BPM configuration guide for charge code 4575 to clarify business rule 4.1 exclusions covering flex ramping. This change is retroactive to January 1st, 2022, and is documented change only. We haven't received any comments, and recommendation comment period expires June 14th, and next step is post-final decision. Any questions on PR 1436?
There are no questions in queue.
Next, PRR 1435, update configuration guide to match settlement BPA formula and virtual bid adjustment for WEIM market balancing authority areas as configured. This is documentation edit, no comment. We haven't received any comments, and recommendation comment period expired June 14th. Next step is post final decision. Any questions on PRR 1435?
There are currently no questions in queue.
PRR 1431, update charge code 6045, over and under scheduling WEIM market allocation to accommodate resource efficiency evaluation enhancement phase 1. This change will take effect, has taken effect June 1st, 2022, and we haven't received any comments. Recommendation comment period expired June 14th. Next step is post-final decision. Any questions on PRR 1431?
There are currently no questions in queue.
Thank you, Michelle.
All right, thanks, Massey. That is all of the PRRs that we had to discuss on today's call. The next BPM meeting is on July 26th at 11 a.m. If you have any additional questions, concerns, or comments that you did not get to today and you'd like to send them to the ISO, please email us at bpm_cm@CAISO.com. Before we close the call today, are there any last questions or comments? You can raise your hand in the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx or hit #2 on the telephone.
There are currently no questions in queue.
All right, great. Well, thank you so much, everyone. That concludes today's call, and I hope you all have a great day.
Thank you, Nicole.
That concludes our conference. Thank you for using Event Services. You may now disconnect.